Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. Let me start tonight with where things stand in the Republican contest for president. And the man sucking up most of the oxygen in the room, Donald Trump. Rudy Giuliani is the former mayor of New York and knows Trump well. By the way, Mr. Mayor, thanks for coming on. On CNN this afternoon, Hillary Clinton was asked about Donald Trump's comments on immigration. Here's what she said.
I'm very disappointed in those comments, and I feel very bad and very disappointed with him and with the Republican Party for not responding immediately and saying enough, stop it. But they are all in the, in the same general area on immigration. They don't want to provide a path to citizenship. They range across a spectrum of being either grudgingly welcome or hostile toward immigrants. And I'm going to talk about comprehensive immigration reform. I'm going to talk about all of the good, law-abiding, productive members of the immigrant community that I personally know, that I've met over the course of my life, that I would like to see have a path to citizenship.
Mr. Mayor, what do you make of that? You're chuckling away there, but what do you think of Hillary Clinton's attack on your guy, basically, a Republican guy from New York, who's making all the noise right now?
Well, first of all, her general statement about the Republican Party is untrue. I mean, it was President Bush who proposed comprehensive immigration reform, which included a path to citizenship. It's Senator Lindsey Graham who paid a pretty big price for it in South Carolina in the primary. I have always been in favor of comprehensive immigration reform. John McCain and the last comprehensive immigration reform was passed by my boss, Ronald Reagan, and I helped to work on that back in 86, 87.
Yeah, that was a big one that never got enforced.
So
it was a good bill that was never got enforced.
Which is part of the problem. And so I think it's a mistake for Hillary to make it a partisan issue, because one of the candidates, made the statement that he made. Donald's a friend of mine. I respect him. He is an unbiased man. I think he said it in reverse. What he should have said is that most people who come across the border for economic reasons.
Well,
but hidden.
I think he said to rape people, basically.
Well, hidden with them, because they're coming across unchecked, are people who rape people, murder people, kill people, and are terrorists. I've prosecuted all of them. And the reality is neither side wants to meet each other here. Republicans want to secure the border, which could be done with about 20,000 Border Patrol agents 50 miles apart, stop them from coming in. Then, on the other side, you have to allow people to come in with visas so they can do the jobs that have to be done in America. If you were to literally close the border, you might as well give up the wine industry in California. I mean, it's gone. So you're going to have to set up a visa program to allow these people to come in.
But Mayor, we all know the answer. Look, you've sized it up not quite well.
It isn't just the Republicans, Chris, it's the Democrats, too.
Look, would you trust either party to enforce the laws about illegal hiring? Would you trust either party to enforce that law?
Neither party has done it.
I know, they don't believe in it. They want cheap labor.
It used to drive me crazy.
Yeah, the Democrats want votes.
Well, when I was the mayor of New York, I had a very, very big crime problem. So what I wanted the Immigration Service to do was to deport the criminals that we convicted. I would go to them, and they would not put the criminals on the front of the line. They'd be throwing out the guy who was working in the back room of a restaurant or a gardener before they'd throw out the drug dealer. So.
I know, you and I agree on a lot. I think you're a practical person. I am, too. And I know no matter how partisan you have to be when you come on these shows, you know that neither party has the guts to come down with a fair, progressive, flexible immigration policy that they intend to enforce. Every other country in the world does that except us. Anyway, I got to get back to Donald Trump. All these big shot business guys, I mean, all these companies have gotten rid of them. NBC, the company I work for, Univision, Televisa, Macy's, Serta, Farouk Systems, NASCAR, ESPN, and the PGA. Is that been fair? And now the mayor of New York right now, de Blasio, says he wants to get rid of Trump doing any business with him. Are they being fair to Donald Trump?
No, they're overdoing it. It's a pylon, and they're overdoing it. I don't agree with Donald's comment. As I said, I would say it totally differently. But I think they're overdoing it. And the conclusion that he comes to, that we have a porous border that needs to be controlled better, is the correct conclusion. And if we could do that, if we could stop illegal immigration, and if we could have a visa program for the workers that we need, then I would be very much in favor of a legalization program for the people that are here. Because it's unrealistic to think that we can
I'm in a different order of that, but I'm with you on that. By the way, isn't the reason why people like Trump, who are outliers, I won't say demagogues because it won't get any further being saying it, although I think there's some demagoguery here, they're popular now because they don't think either of the establishment parties are doing anything. The fact that neither Democrats or Republicans have been able to get through an effective policing on the border, an effective policing of illegal hiring, and some kind of path to citizenship that gives an opportunity for somebody to come in from the cold. Because nobody's gotten that done, Trump can walk out and say, at least as bad a language as I use, as ethnically and obnoxious as I can be, at least you know I mean it. That must be why people are for him in the polling. I don't know how else to explain it.
I think that has something to do with it, and he has focused on one major part of the problem. But there are 4 other parts of the problem that have to be solved as well. The visa part, the road to some kind of regularization for the people here, and a sensible policy for how you deal with the people in the U.S. Now, they talk about sanctuary cities. In New York City, I allowed illegal immigrants to use our hospitals. When they reported crimes, I didn't report them because I wanted their information so I could catch other criminals. And if they put their children in school, I didn't report them. However, if they committed a crime, I not only reported them, I put them in jail, and then I tried to get the INS to deport them, and the INS would deport, maybe 1 out of 5, and I was constantly pressuring them to do more. So, for example, what happened in California shouldn't have happened. The guy who was convicted that many times should never have been allowed back in the United States. So we have a policy that is all messed up.
I agree. Let me ask you about this Republican race, because you were in it, you're pro-choice, and you're for opportunities. In fact, you were for gay rights pretty much down the line. And now the Republican Party seems to have 3 brackets. The hawks, which is just about everybody's a hawk in the Republican Party. The evangelists, who are very much against same-sex, against gay rights at all, basically, and certainly against abortion rights. And they're still fighting that battle. That includes people like Santorum, Cruz, Huckabee, Walker. And then you got one libertarian out there, Paul, who you don't like probably because he's like his dad and he's against wars in the Middle East, period. He's kind of a guy that says stay out of the Middle East. Wait, how's that all going to get brokered together in your party where somebody's going to come out on top who's both hawkish enough, traditional enough, and libertarian enough, in other words, less government enough, to add up into a party that can get 51% against Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think it has to be emphasis on the economy and national security. I'm a Republican for those 2 reasons. On the other reasons, I'm a moderate or whatever else you would like to call me. I am. I don't mind being called a hawk on national security policy. I am. I believe in a strong America that has to assert itself.
Nobody's arguing with you, Mr. Mayor.
I believe in fiscal discipline. I lowered taxes dramatically. I would do it if I was sitting in the White House. But I also believe I have a theory about the Republican Party. If we're the party of lesser government, if we're going to stay out of your pocketbook, shouldn't we stay out of your bedroom as well?
Well, let me ask you this. Can the Republican Party win if it opposes a path to citizenship down the line?
I think they have to talk. No, I think the Republican Party has to say that if you get proper control over the border, then there's going to be a road to, a lot of them would like to say regularization, legal status. I'd like to see them say citizenship. And I believe Governor Bush says citizenship, so I'm pretty happy with that.
If they stay the pro-life party, can they get away with it nationally with women out there for Hillary? Can they convince enough American women to vote pro-life and anti-Hillary both?
I think so. I think there's been enough established that that's now the constitutional law of the United States, inclung with this fairly conservative court, that no president can really interfere with that.
So it's a maneuver. Let me ask you about climate. Can they continue to be skeptics about science? the Republican Party?
I think the Republican Party has to admit that 95% of the scientists look at it in a certain way. Whether you agree with them or you don't agree with them, carbon emissions, all these emissions aren't good for you anyway. So I don't know why we don't support clean air. Even if
but I don't think your party is.
Even if 5 or 10% think it isn't man produced, what's the difference? It still is, dangerous. Now, if you want to go so far as to destroy businesses and to destroy energy, we have to do it in a careful way. And some of the way out environmentalists are just as bad as the ones who are unwilling to accept any form of climate change.
Jerry Seib said something. You always like Jerry Seib in the Wall Street Journal. He goes to my church. I just like the guy. And he said something smart today. He's not a big fan of Donald Trump on a lot of grounds, but he said the Republican Party has a lot of working guys in the party. It's not all elite money guys. It's some working people that work with their hands, work hard, and they look up to Giuliani. They look up to you. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. They look up to Trump.
Well, I hope they do.
They look up to Trump. They see him as a guy who's like, they can imagine he got a beautiful wife. He lives in a gold tower. He says what he feels and thinks like. He's a wise ass. And they sort of explain that appeal if you can.
Yeah,
do you agree with them about that?
It doesn't matter. John Kennedy was a multimillionaire, and he was able to speak very, very well to the regular guy. And so was Ronald Reagan. I mean, Ronald Reagan was an actor. And I guess he was a multimillionaire. I'm pretty sure he was.
But they were polite. This guy's not polite, okay?
Well, look, but he appeals to people. Also, Donald did make it on his own. He's had his ups and downs.
He started with a pretty good grub stake.
He started off with a Queens business that his dad had, and he built it into an empire. I think people respect that in America, and he talks their language. He tells them what he thinks. And I think people are starving for that because everything is sound bites. Everything is scripted. You'd finish one of these presidential debates, and if you said one thing a little bit wrong, you'd have like a revolution.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Spontaneously now, who do you like to see win the nomination of your party?
Well, I got to give you a couple of people. I mean, I like Bush a lot. I still admire very much my friend Chris Christie, Kasich, Scott Walker, Rubio.
Rubio too. You can go with Rubio.
It would be a fine president, George Pataki, who I became very close to. Yeah. He's certainly, and Carly Fiorina looks to me like a great vice presidential candidate.
You were kissing everybody on the cheek. You don't have a favorite.
Maybe you have to look at the order in which I said it to get a hint.
It was such a long list, I forget where it began. Anyway, thank you,
It began
Mayor.
with Jeb Bush.
Thank you, Jeb. I think Jeb Bush still can win this thing in the long run, the very long run. Thank you, Rudy Giuliani, Mayor of New York. Thanks for coming on.